Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. It's the public meeting for the historic context study focused on the Black women's suffrage movement in Washington, D.C. from 1848 to 1973. My name is Kelly Knox, and I am the Director of Development for the D.C. Preservation League. For those of you who maybe are unfamiliar with our organization, welcome and thank you for coming. DCPL is Washington's citywide nonprofit organization focused on preserving, protecting, and enhancing the historical environment of Washington, D.C. We are the #1 filer of landmark nominations in the city, and we host a variety of education programs focused on D.C. history and architecture each month. I have a few things to go over. First of all, I do need to acknowledge DCPL's top sponsors. So these are the places that support DCPL at the highest level. Those include DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, Douglas Development Corporation, QTAC Rock, Meyer Blinder Bell, EHD Tracers Inc., and KCE Structural Engineers. So we already talked about chat. Chat will be open. If questions arise as you would like when you come in, just go ahead and type those in. And I am going to also now share with you the bios of our presenters tonight. So we have a team of researchers who worked on this project for the DC Preservation League, and I'll start with Dr. Portia Hopkins. Dr. Hopkins is a highly accomplished scholar with a doctorate in American Studies from the University of Maryland, College Park. Currently serving as the university historian at Rice University in Houston, Texas, where she actively engages in outreach efforts to empower African American activist groups in Houston with data curation knowledge. She is the co-founder of the Black Houston Symposium, a free conference that brings community members and scholars together to explore themes related to the history, culture, and experiences of Houston's Black communities. She is dedicated to developing best practices documents for curating data while actively participating in the thriving communities of data curation, digital humanities, and African American studies at Rice and throughout Houston. She's excited to join the research team and be the co-PI for the DC Black Women's Suffrage Movement Project, which is this. So the co-PI is Dr. Synatra Smith. Dr. Smith was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in Maryland, but she now lives in the Philadelphia area. She is a Black experience researcher who uses her background in cultural anthropology to explore extended reality, XR, and other digital tools to enhance special collections featuring Black art, history, and culture with the specific intention of documenting workflows that can be shared with students, cultural heritage workers, and scholars interested in building digital projects without relying on a large budget or team. In her CLIR/DLF postdoctoral fellowship in data curation for African American Studies at the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Temple University Library's Loretta C. Duckworth Scholar Studio, she has been researching Black artists in the collections of the TMA, the Temple University Library's Charles L. Bloxton Afro-American Collection, and other local organizations to enhance their digital visibility through linked data. So with that, bios are complete. We begin the presentation. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Hopkins right now to begin. Thank you.
I hope that you can hear me. The mic is not working so great, but I'm hoping that you can hear me. Hello, everyone. I'm Portia Hopkins. Excited for you to join us tonight and to get your feedback on this exciting project, which we all have benefited from in one way or another. Having these amazing women not just fight for our right to vote, but also fight for so many social and civic projects. So I'm going to play Sinatra's video. This is her presentation.
Uh, so,
Is there a question for Dr. Smith? Any
well,
questions? Okay, so hearing none, I will move forward. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about the national nomination of the National Women's, let me make sure I get it right, National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. I have to spell it out. So let me tell you a little bit about these headquarters that are at 1601 R Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and was established as essentially an epicenter for women's civic power. We would be remiss if we didn't recognize that this was actually a much longer and larger conversation that started really in the early 1800s with women like Sojourner Truth talking about, well, aren't I a woman in 1851, or freedom fighters like Frederick Douglass, who was instrumental in getting the amendment passed, but then also at the end ended up choosing gender over race, essentially. And so the headquarters in and of itself is uh, really where the core principles of racial uplift come through. I'm just going to let Diane in if that's okay. Uh, and you'll see throughout the presentation, there are these like little purple squares, right? And so within those purple squares, these are all documents, primary sources that are sourced from the National Convention records, and then also sourced from some private collections. So these are things that are easily obtainable online, but you could also go to the Library of Congress or the National Archives or one of the repositories around the country to look at the records. Actually spent some time with the microfiche the other day, and it was just really, it's kind of like riding a bike. So anyway, so let's think about some of the core principles. And if there's any aspect of this presentation that you want to add to, I just encourage you to take a note and we can talk about it at the end. So the first thing is, of course, elevating the domestic sphere. Now, why would this be an important aspect of this organization's core principles? Well, the domestic sphere is going to be the place in which women have the most authority and the most power. They have this classic idea stemming from really Republican motherhood that talks about the ways in which women are supposed to keep and maintain not just their home, but also create spaces in which these men who are going out to vote, these Republican men, will be able to have peaceful, joyous, calm, clean, collective environments, right? The domestic sphere is also a place where children are going to be the center of the conversation, focusing on education and literacy, manners. These are types of things that really help to uplift what we're going to eventually turn into, which is the modern middle Black class. So these things are really central to the organization at its core. To go with that, nurturing youth, offering free community kindergartens and daycare networks to shield vulnerable families from the social elements. And as a mom, I can definitely understand, as a working mom, trying to find a safe place for your kid to go. And if you think about this in the early 1900s, in the 19 teens, in the 1920s, this is going to be a really important aspect as more women enter into the workforce. What are we going to do with our younger kids? They're not quite ready for school yet. So, building upon this idea of public education that really starts in the 1840s, the women in the organization are going to nurture this idea of creating what is called community kindergartens, right? So, essentially, free daycare networks through the organization. Having this labor dignity unlocked. This is going to be really important both as women are entering the workplace, and it has a lot to do with like training and the ways in which women, particularly Black women, have access to training within the industry industries that are in Washington, D.C., and then also all over the country, but then also the trades and what type of training initiatives are going to be available to the community as a whole, right? And so when we think about labor and the dignity of labor, and we can think about, prior to the Civil War, Black people were all hard workers. After the Civil War, they were all lazy. And so there's a lot of conversation that really stems around creating this labor dignity, both for men and women, and then also offering vocational training so that people can enter the industry and enter trades. And we see this very clearly, not just in the things that they champion, but also in some of the organizations that these women help create. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly to me, is instilling cultural pride, right? They're explicitly they're counter racist. If Dr. Kendi was here, he would say, you are definitely an anti-racist. And what's really exciting about the types of work that they're doing is that they're staring racism, racial oppression, and violence, mob violence, literally in the face. And they're finding ways not just to report on it, to get information out through their networks about it, but also going to Congress and talking to Congress about passing an anti-lynching bill. And so you'll see a little bit more of that in the presentation. Okay, we also can think about some of the roots of this. So, how does this conversation of what universal enfranchisement really looks like for Black women? We already had this conversation that was occurring in 1848 and a little bit earlier, but really 1848 is the day in Seneca Falls, talking about women having this universal suffrage, attaching those ideals from the Declaration of Independence and writing this new declaration for women. But the thing that they left out is when they said all women, they really just meant white women. And so there's going to be a rift within the efforts to get universal suffrage, right? And there's a lot of political threads that we could pull from this. Some of them are Southern threads, some of them are cultural threads, some of them are just like white elitist threads, right? So there's a lot of things that we could pull from this, but essentially, there's rumblings within the community, and they're talking about what does enfranchisement look like for us. So Mary Ann Shadd Curry is going to meet in 1888 at Pisgah Chapel to discuss these early efforts to provide Black women's suffrage to the community, right? It's really exciting to know that these records are held at Howard University's archive. Shout out to Brandon for sharing these resources with us. And then also the Colored Women's League, organized in 1892 under the leadership of Helen Apple Cook, Josephine Bruce, and Mary Church Terrell. This is going to be an alliance, and you're going to see a lot of these type of collaborative and cooperative relationships, both regionally and locally, that's going to build upon the intellectual power that we have collectively as a people, right? And so we're going to be addressing disenfranchisement on the legal field, in the cultural realm, but then also within our own American identity, right? Like, how can we say that we're a real democracy if everyone does not have the right to vote? This is just a visual so you can see how and why some of these splits happen. We're dealing in a time where things are incredibly stratified and really, really deeply seatedly racist. You're coming off the heels of the Civil War. You're coming off of the heels of legislation from presidents that are not supportive of giving Black people any rights, much less giving Black women the right to vote. And so you're going to also start to see this trickle down through the community, both politically, culturally, and socially, right? Starting with this split, right? So there's a schism between the American Equal Rights Association, shout out to those folks, in 1866, when white leaders, they're going to abandon this idea of racial equality, right? We just want to focus on white women's suffrage because they felt like, coincidentally, it was going to be easier to get passed. Why would it be easier to get passed? Well, at the time, they're speaking specifically about elite and upper echelon, upper middle class white women. If these women who are educated, well-read, intelligent, from strong families, men in their family have traditions of voting, then why should they not get the vote? But then someone, and these are their words, that's coming off the boat with no cultural concept of what it means to be an American citizen after 5 years of learning English, now they get the vote. Like, how is that democracy? And so, really, this conversation about an equal rights amendment is tongue in cheek because they really weren't talking about equal rights for all of us. They were really talking about equal rights in the sense of preserving white female suffrage. The second thing is the Southern expendency. So, again, we're coming off the heels of the Civil War. We're coming off the heels of Reconstruction. And so you're going to have this idea that we need to find some way to unify the country again. Like, how do we unify the country again? And one of the ways that, particularly white women that are interested in enfranchising women across the country, are going to do that is appealing to Southern women and saying, if you fight for the right to vote with us, we're not going to have these conversations about Black women also having the right to vote in these national platforms, right? And so that really makes it easy because I now, as a Southern educated white woman who does not have the vote, don't have to worry about this conversation of, am I racist or am I not? I don't have to worry about this conversation or the possibility of interacting with Black people because the causes that I'm championing and the organizations that I'm a part of do not allow Black people to be on a national platform and a national stage, right? And so there's this idea that in romancing the Southern electorate and the Southern vote, they're also playing into these ideas of what white supremacy looks like and is, right? And then, of course, we have this uncompromising stance that Mary Church Terrell, in all of her glory and all of her bravery, is going to reject requests to withdraw Black Women Club affiliations and to compromise these ideas of the civil rights for white political gains. In the PowerPoint that Dr. Smith created, that was in the video, you'll see a little clip about the parade that happened in 1913. And what's really fascinating about this Women's March, this crusade, in DC. Thousands of women are coming from all over the country. And it actually also has a Rice connection. So through this research, I've also found that there's a woman that graduated from Rice Institute in 1916 and actually joined the fight, right? So she's one of the first graduates from the Institute. She joined the fight. She was at the march. She was the secretary for Alice Paul, right? So, like, these are really big moments that African American women are being sidelined for. And as the story goes, Mary Church Terrell is going to be influential in getting as in the Black community, we call them the D9, right? Or these early sororities to come and particularly Delta Sigma Theta. But also, she's going to say, I'm not marching in the back of that parade. I'm going to march with the individuals from my state with that delegation. You're not going to sideline me or the rights of my people to the back of the line. Let's keep going. And then some of additional leaders that you might be familiar with. Of course, one of my personal favorites, Ida B. Wells Burnett. This woman is courageous. She's a genius. She is a fighter, and she's able to recognize that we cannot live in a free country if we continue to accept lynching as mob violence throughout the country, and that there's no legal recourse for excuse me, the mob people. I don't want to say mobsters because that kind of implies something else. Also, Margaret M. Washington. She's a Southerner educating individuals at Tuskegee, and she's really interested in integrating this rural outreach, right? So it's kind of hard for us to imagine this now because so many of us live in a city. But let me take you back to the early 1900s, where the majority of the people still lived in rural areas and they lived on farms. National Geographic actually did a story a couple years ago about the land loss in Black communities, and that 100 years ago, we had like 90% of the people in the Black community owned some property. And now it's less than 10%, right? And so she's really, Washington, that is really acknowledging the fact that a lot of these African Americans that need the most help are in these rural areas, and they're stuck in this carousel of sharecropping and debt peonage and racism and Southern patriarchy, and it's really difficult for them to get out of it. And so she really emphasized this idea of industrial training, right? I was telling my students the other day, one thing that people can never take away from you is you being good at your job, right? And so she recognized that one of the ways that she could be helpful and bring forth change is through this idea rooted in the Tuskegee experiment, rooted in the Tuskegee ideology that we can pull ourselves up from our bootstraps through industrial training and domestic reform. And finally, Mary McLeod Bethune, whose influence, of course, goes beyond any presentation that I could give in 20 minutes. But she really was influential in creating federal public policy, and she subsequently founded the National Council for Negro Women. I found out through additional research that she also helped integrate the Association of University Women, which I am a member of, and I did not know that. So that was really exciting for me to learn. But also all of the work that she did to uplift the community and really focus on education and bring the platform of the association to a wider audience. So, like, we really just would be remiss if we didn't spend some time and shout out to Mary McLeod Bethune. Okay, so let's examine some additional sources. Okay, so this is really great because these actually came from a personal collection. We love that. A collection that was I really just can't wait to dig in her stuff. Like I'm excited to come to Dr. Nance's house and just dig around. But this picture really features the legacy, right? Mary McLeod Bethune, Julie West Hamilton, excuse me, Ella P. Stewart, and Mary Church Terrell, right? And so here are women that continued to carry on this legacy of the NACWC. And it's one of those things that I would imagine so many individuals in the organization and likely throughout just the Black community likely have some reference to or some material for the organization. And what would be so wonderful is for us to get some additional information and source material so that we can not just make the national nomination really strong, but also so that as the organization moves forward and thinking about digital archives or exhibition space, they'll have a lot of things to pull from. So these are just two examples, courtesy of Dr. Linda Nance. I also had another one. I hope during Q&A I can just add it to a slide. It's this really cool badge she sent me from the 5th-year anniversary of the convention. I guess it'll be the 10 years since it's biannual. Okay, so again, we're kind of going back to this conversation. What are these women fighting for? They want the vote, right? Give her the vote. This is an open letter that was sent to the National American Suffrage Association, which, if you remember, was an association that, was like, we're gonna sideline this conversation about Black women getting the vote. We really just want to focus on getting white women the vote, and then we'll see what happens next, right? And so this is an open letter from the president, and she says, in part, a republic based on the theory of universal suffrage, in which a large class of educated women representing the virtue, intelligence, wealth, and position of the nation are disenfranchised, is an anomaly in the government, especially when all men, foreign and native, Black and white, ignorant and vicious, by their votes decide the rights and duties of this superior class, right? And so there's a couple of things that we can tease out here. One, she's drawing our attention, and what a great moment to remind us that we are on the eve of the 250th anniversary of American independence, right? If we are to be a republic, we must keep it. Thank you, Benjamin Franklin. And if we are to be a republic, we must keep it. And in order to keep a republic, we have to make sure that the best and the brightest among us are having an opportunity to help lead and make this country better. And so this is essentially the argument. And often these arguments around women getting the vote is geared around that these are educated women, right? They're educated women, they're well studied, they're astute, they're virtuous. They're the type of women that you would want to bring home to your mom, essentially, right? But they're definitely the type of women that should receive the vote. They also are going to pass these resolutions throughout their conventions. And what's really great about the convention records starting, I think, with the seventh or eighth convention. They have all of the minutes, right? I mean, everything, not just the program. And so, one of the things that was just really remarkable are some of these resolutions that are coming out of these conventions. So, imagine, if you will, just go back in time with me. And you're in your corset and you're in your long outfit, and it's the middle of summer, it's August, it's hot, and we are meeting together to have a conversation about the direction that we've come from and then also the direction that we seek to go in. And so these are two of the resolutions that were passed. And I think they're really important because one, they are very clear about what the stance is for NACWC. But also, it ties this conversation of universal suffrage to temperance, right? And this was a strategy that a lot of women's organizations would use because there was a big, big problem with alcoholism and drunkenness and irresponsibility and, frankly, just emotional intelligence from a lot of the men that were also at that time still getting the vote, right? And so they called this amendment the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. And so it says, whereas the Susan B. Anthony Amendment to the federal Constitution has passed the House of Representatives and is now before the Senate, be it resolved that we, the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, urge upon the President and the Senate the immediate passage of this amendment. Now, the first time it came through Congress, it stalled in Senate. But the second time it came through, they were successful in getting this amendment through, right? And it's tied to the 21st Amendment, right, which is going to not allow us to drink alcohol for a little bit. And we all know how that went, right? So whereas the liquor traffic is a national evil, and whereas since food will win the war, they're referring here to the Great War, right? This is one of the slogans that they use. The conservation of all foodstuff is a war necessity. Therefore, be it resolved that the National Association of Colored Women, representing 100,000 members, in session assembled in Denver, Colorado, endorsed the national prohibition and sent telegrams to President Wilson and Congress of the United States urging the passage of the Prohibition Amendment. All right. And so you really cannot entangle this conversation of universal suffrage from this conversation of temperance. They were also involved in the anti-lynching clause, right? This really just struck my heart. It's one of the things that it keeps coming up in my research. It keeps just haunting me in my dreams, right? The way that young Black women and men were targeted in this country, the anti-lynching clause was so important. And so these are documents that were actually passed out at the conventions, right? And so what you will see is the NACWC actually having these partnerships and these alliances, these loosely connected networks in which when you come to the convention, very similar to how we have conventions now, there's lots of literature and vendors and different people that are there to share their message, but also support you in your agenda and yours. And so this is a really important moment because here the Commission on Interracial Cooperation, which is headquartered in Atlanta, is going to have these pamphlets that are being passed out, trying to get the lynching bill passed in 1922. Now, they were not successful in this, and it's hard to believe now because of how much data they literally were flooding Congress with every day. And this is not, they sent you a text, they sent you an email. They're sending thousands of letters a week to Congress trying to get this bill passed, right? But what's very interesting is that even though this conversation is elevated to now we have a commission on interracial cooperation, Ida B. Wells Burnett had already been doing this work, and she had been doing this work since the 1880s. And so her already spearheading this lynching campaign and allowing is the wrong word, and accepting the larger platform and the additional opportunity to spread the word about anti-lynching, she was able not only to travel internationally under this banner of anti-lynching, but also as a representative of the NACWC. And she took our message out into the world and said, these are things that are happening in America. And these are the things that we would really like international pressure to help combat these things, right? Now, this is pre-UN. This is pre any type of Declaration of Human Rights. Like we're not even there yet. So really, she's having a very early conversation that gets kind of baked into some of those early ideals of the United Nations in the 40s. This is just another example of that coalition building. It's reminded in the national minutes that national notes, excuse me, the national notes is their uh, national publication, their organ. So the National Association of Colored Women will cooperate with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This makes sense, right? Through the Department of Suppression of Lynching and Mob Violence, Ms. Nannie Helen Burroughs, chairman in its campaign to abolish lynching. And so they even say, even if you don't have a local club there and you want to donate, you can still donate. Like this is an issue that affects everyone. It affects every family. It affects every person, both black and white. And so this is something that we should all collectively be able to get behind as a black community, but also in a larger sense as an American people who value democracy, who value the republic, and who shun mob violence, right? And we're back to Mary McLeod Bethune. And so this again is just another example of some of the richness of the history of this organization. And it draws our attention also to other sites within DC that played a pivotal role in African American advancement, including the 19th Street Baptist Church and Armstrong, then high school, but before that, it was a training school. And so here's a moment for you to kind of think about, man, how has this affected me in real time? If you haven't been to the Frederick Douglass House, oh, I spelled his name wrong. Sorry about that. I'll fix that in the final presentation. If you haven't gone to the Frederick Douglass House in Anacostia, I encourage you to go. The reason we still have this house is because of the women in this organization. They were at the forefront of preserving his legacy, preserving his home, and ensuring that his fight is never forgotten, right? And so, in safeguarding that residence, now in 2026, not only can you go to the residence, you can actually do a 3D tour. And so, if you haven't been yet, you can do this 3D tour that's a scan code here. And if you're interested in visiting more National Register sites around DC, there's a property list that Dr. Smith put together, and I created the map using a software called Felt. And so this QR code over here is to the map, and then this QR code right here is to look at Frederick Douglass's house. Okay, and just another image of Frederick Douglass's home. It was really a prideful moment that the organization was able to preserve his memory, right? And we can't forget about men. Like men are still involved. They're still doing stuff, right? And so one of the things that we see very early on is that many of the men that are married to these ambitious women are also very ambitious themselves and really about racial uplift. Two examples are actually listed here in a resolution that was passed at convention. It states, resolved, that we commend Dr. I.N. Ross and Honorable J.C. Napier for the manly stand they take against segregation, right? And I just thought that that was such a interesting word choice. But if you pull back the layers and recognize the moment in which this was written, manly was to say, this is what a real man does, right? It was also a nod to the fact that people would say black people are not men. That's not a man, right? Well, he's being very manly by standing up against segregation, knowing what it could cost him in his life, right? And so here are two examples. And we see just here, this is from a directory, actually, one of the Washington directories, that their wives were very involved with Mrs. Ian Ross with the Linda Hand Association, and then also Mrs. J.C. Napier with the YWCA. Right? Here's another example, right? And this one's a little bit darker. It's the lightest I could get it, but it said 10 reasons why men should support the worthy project of giving at least $1, right? And so it goes down this list. Some examples are it's practically the first national organization headquarters to be established in Washington by our group. Speaking about the headquarters at 1601 R Street. The eyes of the nation, the world are upon the activities of our group, right? So not only are we being watched, there's also a level of surveillance there, right? And so within that surveillance, we want men to help think about the ways that their efforts could also protect this organization and preserve it. Some of the things that we're rooted in our racial uplift strategies, our education, welfare at every phase and activity for the well-being of the race. And so, what does that sound like? That sounds like there's going to be aid and assistance and educational opportunities. So, men can actually envision, like, I wonder if I had those opportunities when I was younger, like, would I be in a different place, right? Now, a dollar might not seem like a lot, but a dollar was a pretty hefty amount for you to be sending at the time. And so, with men being more integrated into the organization, and then the organization having so many different organs, so many different regions, and reaching so many different places, what we start to see is both men and women fighting the same fight, right, for this racial uplift inequality. Here's another example of how we're going to get involved with the civil rights movement. A speech that was given in 1954 at the National Convention in DC positions the NACWC as pioneering advocates for significant social and civic initiatives throughout the nation. And I just love just this sentence right here. She says, "We are known to be a part of every worthy community objective, not some, every worthy community objective, every worthy community organization, such as the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. We helped found it," right? Period. And so you could really see that they're not shying away from the work that they've done. They're very proud of the work that they've done. And in the partnerships that they build, these coalitions that they build with these other organizations, they're able to get policy passed and be able to push for more change, right? Here's another example. In 1954, as you remember, this is Brown v. Board of Education. What's going to happen with Brown v. Board of Education? Well, now public schools, K through 12 schools, are going to be integrated, right? With all immediate speed. Now, we all know that that's not very fast, but they're reporting on this, right? So their convention was in August on the eve of school starting for many districts. And they report on this at the convention. And they say, in addition to the Topeka, let me see, Brown versus Board that's happening, and we're waiting for them to pass down the decree. Already in DC, St. Louis, Missouri, Baltimore, Topeka campus, Kansas, and in small communities like Haddock, Missouri, they're already seeing Negro pupils being able to go to white schools, right? And so this again is an opportunity for them to share news throughout their network, news that their network may not have gotten had they not been participants in this organization or had they not been affiliated with this fight. This is one of my favorite finds. They talk about buying the building. So the original building that they had has since been demolished. But they talk about purchasing this 1601 R Street property. And they say, but as we all know at this convention, and as the citizens of Washington know from reading their papers, we have just recently acquired a very magnificent and very wonderful new association house at 1601 R Street. And people just burst into applause, right? This building, we hope, will stand as a permanent monument to the genius and the industry, and the faith and the devotion of the Negro Club women, right? And so we're really hoping that this is going to be an easy sell for the register, right? Like this is obviously a place that has significant and rare historical value. And as Mary Church Terrell said just 2 years earlier when she was in Los Angeles, the physical space of our headquarters is a sanctuary for activism where our community builds a sustainable future by blending past legacy with present action, right? And so, really, it goes without saying that this should be on the National Register and that this is an important part both of DC history, of Black history, but then also of American history. There's a couple of things that are still left to be added. And so for the actual contextual context study, I still need to do some additional additional research around the home rule with DC. And some of the things that I found just early on, those Southern Dixiecrats were absolutely anti the home rule. They said some pretty scathing things on the floor of Congress. But then also, there were letter writing campaigns and media packets that were provided that really helped people understand why it was important for Washington, D.C. to have home rule, right? And especially because D.C. was a place, and continues to be a place with a relatively high African American population, not having home rule actually disenfranchised a lot of African Americans. And so it makes absolute and complete sense that the NACWC would be integral in helping home rule be passed in 1973. All right, and this is just a fun little word bubble. My 8-year-old helped me make it. And so I just want to say thank you very much. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Check the chat. Okay. Any comment? Are there gaping holes from people that are very familiar with this history? Are there gaping holes that need to be filled in before we turn in the National Register nomination?
This is
Oh, thank
Linda
you, Carrie.
Nance. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Dr. Nance.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? You look
I,
well.
I would love some information to be included about Lincoln Thomas Day, as that was a time when Abraham Lincoln was in conversation with Miss Thomas, took her property and basically used it to save the Capitol and his life. So I think that's significant as well.
Yes, thank you. You did mention that at our last meeting, and I did not include that, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Remind me again, was the date 1960, 19, blah, 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 1861?
I, I'd have to look at it myself.
Okay,
And I'll try to give you that before we get off this call.
okay.
I've got lots of dates running around in my head right now.
Sure.
Um,
No, I can look it up. No, that's important. And this was just for people that aren't familiar with this day. And please, Dr. Nance, correct me if I get the history wrong. But the property that was near the White House and in DC was actually owned by a Black woman. And Abraham Lincoln, through eminent domain,
yes.
utilized that property to essentially set up shop for the military. And the organization celebrates Lincoln Thomas Day as a reminder that we continue to sacrifice for freedom of our people, but that also, um, it really kind of brings this conversation back into my mind about how messy the Civil War was and how challenging it must have been to be in the federal capital at that time. Yes, ma'am, with your hand raised. You're muted.
Here we
We can
go.
hear you. There
Hi,
you go. Hi.
my name is Denise Williams. I'm national president of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, and I'm doing dual today. Giving out scholarships and sitting out here in the hallway waiting for our turn. But I wanted to just piggyback off of Lincoln Thomas Day.
Yes.
One of the key components was it was considered the battle at Fort Stevens that took place. So that was one of the minor battles of the Civil War at that time. And so her land actually sits on where the battle actually took place.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That's going to be very helpful to add to the contextual study. And it's just a really important point because I think it's one of those like moments in history where again we recognize the sacrifice of Black women. So thank you for that.
Yes, Elizabeth Thomas was a free Black woman, and her property was taken during that time and used to protect the White House and the president during that Battle of Fort Stevens. And you are correct, it's 1861.
Oh, I win Jeopardy today. How about that?
And I
Other
have a
questions?
wonderful picture to send you too, courtesy of a previous historian, Cassandra Geis, who sent that to me.
Yes, please. Any resources that you feel will be helpful, anyone on the call, please feel free to send them to me. I'm going to put my email in the chat and then also my cell phone number. I do text, hey, this is so and so, and this is what you sent me. So if you want to send me something, I can also receive it that way.
Great. And
I think
there was one other name that I thought was significant, and that was Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, because she
Hmm.
did have several conversations, or should I say speeches, that were in the wider organization of women against not against, but trying to win the right to vote. And that was significant.
Give me her name one more time, Dr. Nance.
Frances Ellen Watkins Harper.
Ellen Watkins. Okay. Harper. Okay, perfect. And I'll look her up.
And I'll send you another little bit about that.
Yes. Excellent. Kelly, are you still on? Will you tell us what our next steps will be as we move forward to completion on this project?
Yeah, sure. So the next steps in this process will be we are lucky that this project was funded through the National Park Service, and we have a grant representative there that we will submit to them a copy of the context study as well as the nomination here for their review. They will have some time to review, make edits, tell us what they think might need further explanation or, amending, give it back to us. And then once we feel like we have a complete piece, we submit first to DC to see that they will get it. They will consider it through their Historic Preservation Review Board. And so Doctors Hopkins and Synatra will present to DC's Historic Preservation Review Board, and assuming that they will say, this is great and we want to accept it, DC accepts it, and then it moves from there through to the National Register, where the National Park Service, with the National Register, they will accept the context study and then approve the nomination as well. So I think it should be mentioned that this NACWC was a new nomination, but there was also work that was done to update the Mary Church Terrell House, and that was completed last year. Howard University had done a whole bunch of work on that site, and the nomination, the update to the nomination to include her importance in fighting for Black women's suffrage is included in that nomination as well. So that's also part of this project.
Mhm.
I have two other questions. One is, would it be of value to mention that the effort to end lynching was started very early in this organization's fight to look at that issue, but it didn't happen until 2022?
I do have that as a footnote, but I can move that to the main context. And I think you're absolutely right. Like thinking about how long people have been fighting for a very basic thing, right?
Yes,
Like no mob rule, don't hang people, shouldn't be
yes,
hard. 2022,
yes, yes. Um,
so
and
absolutely.
and then the other piece is, at one point our building was rented out, and
Okay.
it became a very popular nightclub in the DC area, and it was a safe space for people in our legislature to socialize. And
Mm.
it had lots and lots of very famous people, both government people, entertainment people, coming through that space, and it had a reputation as a reputable safe space. And I don't know whether that would be worth mentioning in this history of the building as well.
Is this like Cold War safe space or like earlier racial integration? I'm hanging out with my white friends safe space.
hanging out with my Black friends.
Yeah. Okay, great. Is
Um,
that the Foxtrot? Is that what you sent
Yes,
me?
that's
Okay.
exact
yes.
Fox Trap.
Fox Trap. Okay.
Yes.
You know we have a Fox Trap in Houston.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It was in more, it had a name in more than one place. Yes.
Yeah. I said,
There
wait a
is
minute, I've
a
been there. I've been
YouTube.
there.
There's a YouTube video
Yes.
about the fox trap.
Okay.
Yes. I sent her link to that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wasn't sure whether we should or not. And I sent you information about that for exactly that reason, for there to be some determination from um, group heads rather than just the
Mhm.
one.
Yeah. No, I at the very least, I will include those in the source material.
Because I
And
think there is a picture of Obama in one of those things, in one of those videos too.
okay. Yeah, so we definitely want to make sure that that's in there too then. Um, and there was another question. Remind me again when your national convention is this year. Has it
It
already
is.
happened?
No, it's July the 15th through the 19th, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
Because
okay.
I'm going to be there earlier and a little later in both situations. So we are doing in July, and it would be wonderful if we would be able to have a status update at least um, at that particular time for
Sure.
our president to make an announcement about where we are in that
Absolutely.
effort.
Is that something that you'd want me to like write up or to synthesize this presentation?
Denise, you'd have to answer that one. Is she gone?
No, no, I'm here.
Okay, I was like, she might be giving away
My ear
scholarships.
was someplace else.
That's
Okay.
okay. I was saying that we would love to have updated information to be able to share at the conference. And Dr. Hopkins was asking, do we need to show a presentation like this one or something of that sort to share with people at the convention?
Well, I would love to have a presentation, something like what you shared with us tonight would be fantastic. But if that can't be, if you can just write something up, we'll take either one.
Okay, great. Yeah. Let me work on that for you and work with Dr. Nance if that's okay. If I could work with
Yes,
you
Hmm.
on that and
that would
then
be great.
prepare something. I mean, even if it's just a combination of Dr. Smith's video and then like maybe pieces of this presentation in a little
Hmm.
blurb or something. Yeah. I think too, it's so just important for people to think about what they have, particularly because your organization is like legacy built,
Yes.
and so like my mom was in it, my grandma was in it, and so there very well could be things that people have that they don't think's important, right? They're like, oh, this is a badge or whatever, but it
And
actually is.
the
We want to
badge
see
I
it.
just, Dr. Hopkins, I just got the badge a day or two ago from Denise, who
Wow.
showed it in her hand. And I thought, oh, she needs to know about this. And Denise, I just sent it to her today.
She did, yeah. And had my internet be was working faster, I would have put it in this presentation. But I will put it in the one for your conference. Because I think people have stuff in their house. I
And
Hmm.
do.
we need to know the name of the person you got that from to give her credit for that.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes,
Because that's very important.
that's right.
Dr. Hopkins, we have another question in the chat. Dana Powell is asking if you can speak about the role of class in NACWC and other group strategy as they worked for suffrage. Or
That's
maybe
great.
Dr. Nance knows about that. If one of you two could answer those questions, that'd be great. That question. Thank you,
That's a
Dana.
great question. Yeah, so I can lead that off and then, if anyone wants to chime in. So, one of the things that I think is so amazing about this organization is it literally is lifting as we climb, right? And so they're building a middle class as they're creating this organization. Well, how are they doing that? Well, they're supporting middle class ideals, right? Like domesticity and property ownership and training and vocational skills, right? And education. So they're championing these middle class ideals, but then they're creating their own unique African American middle class identity, right? But at the same time, I'm not and I really just don't like analogies, but like I'm not a crab in a barrel. I want to lift you up too, right? And so some of their organizations where they're giving assistance to needy families, They're helping getting people into homes. They're helping people to understand the layout of their job so they can think about promotion later on. Like all of these things this organization is doing, and it really does hit home where they say there's not a piece of civic responsibility or civic objective that we're not also a part of, right? And so it's very much building this middle class identity, but also, bringing up these, I don't want to say these, but like working class communities that may not have access to the different types of things that the organization is offering: free kindergarten, access to healthcare, voter education, voter registration, things like that.
My comment would be, in answer to that question, would be that the general philosophy and attitude of this organization was that you could be a domestic worker, or you could be a college educated worker, a person, or you could be steeped in lots of education. Many of the women who were leaders in the organization were teachers and professors at universities, but they were always involved in the health of women, the health of children, the health of families. And that meant all you needed to be is a woman who was steeped in a Christian faith and a desire to do better and lift other people.
That's right. Thank you. Great question, Dana.
I also think the general camaraderie and stewardship that each of the different clubs tried to put forward showed that right out of slavery, we were the people who needed to rely upon one another.
Yeah.
And the speed at which clubs were formed at that particular time said to me that women were starved for that kind of camaraderie and help, because it was a help to different people in smaller communities to have someone to say, you can do this and your child can grow in these particular ways, or you can do this and your relationship in your home can be different. And you had women to rely upon and be helped by.
That's right. That's right. I'm waiting for the movie. Like what person is Octavia Butler gonna play? Like, I mean, I'm waiting for the movie because it's just such a rich history. It's really a rich history. And I appreciate you so much for carrying the legacy, and just helping in this whole process. So
Thank you. We got lots of ladies within this organization who have done some marvelous things, and they've raised some questions. I was always excited when I read the minutes to see the questions that they asked and the topics that they presented, because there were some real meaty kinds of questions and ways to help people and their struggles to put their pennies together to make a big difference wherever in the country they were pushing for whatever they were pushing for.
that's right. That's right. And so in that way, it's like the local and the national, and they're working in tandem for the uplift of the people, right? And I just think that's, if more organizations worked like that, we'd probably have very different outcomes in some very critical areas of policy. So it is 7:07 my time. What time do you have, and how much more time do we have for questions? Kelly, I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Sure. I mean, the window was going till 8:30, but if the questions have, it's 8:07 here now. If other people have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. We'll just ask you to introduce yourself, and you can ask a question if you like. I'll just say now too, I will follow up with everybody who is here now with Dr. Hopkins's phone number that she said you could text her at and her email address, so that if you have other things that you would like to tell or share about this topic, then you can do that as well. If you have information you'd like to share related to Black women's suffrage in general, you could send it to her. You can also send it to me. I am the person who emailed everybody these reminders about the meeting tonight. So you're welcome to reach out to me to give me information, or that I can pass on, or I can connect you with Drs. Hopkins and Smith, whatever you would like. But we do have a little bit more time here if anyone would like to unmute and ask a question. If not, then we can also, end here. So we'll see how this goes.
I'm not against Zoom karaoke if we want to. We want to end with "Lift as We Climb." We can.
I'm sticking in chat a couple of the names that I mentioned before,
Okay.
so you can remember those, I'm hoping, because they were significant. There's also a good number of women across the country whose names have been put on buildings at universities, or universities named in their honor because of their commitment to education. Um, it's just a lot of stuff to really be proud of, and be awed by. And I think I shared this with you, Dr. Hopkins, once before. When we opened I guess we should do that too. We should put some reference to the fact that we opened on the third floor of the building. There is now an attempt to preserve our history, and we did that in 2024. But during that time when we opened that up to our participation of our members, when we had the conference in Washington, D.C., there was a young lady looking at the different things on the walls, and her comment, just in her ethereal response to the pictures that she was looking at of our women marching in front of the White House against lynching, she said, "We're not doing enough."
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, said what we chose to stick on the wall, those pictures that we have from our history, those things need to be seen by our younger women. They need to be reminders to the senior members of our group that together we can do some stuff that makes people aware in a way that makes them move.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And there's something very powerful about being in that space that those things are happening.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm in this space where they were sending out these correspondence and having these discussions and collecting the funds to send people to convention. Like all of those things I think is really rich for the site itself.
Oh, I don't think I spelled her name right.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, should we wrap up, Dr. Hopkins? Is there anything else you want to share before we are done? And I will just reiterate that Dr. Smith's message in the chat, which is thank you all for your patience with our technology challenges tonight. I don't know. It was just a wild ride here. So thank you all for hanging in and signing back in when my computer booted us all out, unfortunately, for that.
No
doing the right thing.
Signing back.
No worries. I was like, oh my God, my computer died in the middle of this. I knew that was gonna happen. I should have plugged it in. Like I was just waiting for it. And I was like, wait, I'm still on here. Okay, wait. Okay. So yeah, I got figured out. No worries. I think I'm good. I got some good notes from the conversation, and then I'll listen to the recording again to make sure I get all the names right and everything. And then I'm gonna work with Dr. Nance to get something ready for the national convention because I do think an update would be really great. And then I will work with you, Kelly, to get this over the finish line.
Yep, sounds good.
Awesome. Okay. So
I
these
thank you. I thank you for doing
340.
this.
Absolutely. I thank you for what you guys are doing. I couldn't do what I'm doing if you didn't do what you did.
All righty. Well, that's
And
cool.
let me tell you, Dr. Nance, I told one of my mentor faculty, I just absolutely adore Dr. Bird. And I told him what you told me about in 1904 that the shade was segregated in St. Louis.
Yes,
And his chin dropped to the ground. He was like, "What?" And I said, "I know. Can you imagine?" And so then, probably for about a minute or two, we nerded out on how would one find that information? Like, where was said shade? And was the shade in mud? And like, were there separate?
well, that also says to me, um, we need to put something in there about the 1904 World's Fair
Mhm.
involvement of. I'll write that in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. That's just interesting. So Dr. Nance told me about this just real quick, this brief story about when the women went to the World's Fair, they were going and they were supposed to be like separate entrance, separate restroom, go somewhere else to eat, like all of these things. And the women were like, absolutely not. And so they met together and were like, how should we handle this? Like some people wanted to go, some people didn't want to go, some people want to make a stand, some people want to write a letter, right? But the thing that stuck out to me in that story was that shade
They were
was
not able to
segregated.
stand in the same shade as white women.
Do you understand how crazy that sounds? Do you like it was 104 today. Please tell a Texan that they cannot stand in somebody's shade. Like yeah, so my mentor and I definitely geeked out about that. And we agree you should write something about that because there is nobody writing on black shade in that way.
Well, there was a companion book that the Missouri History Museum um, had several people who were involved with the exhibit to write about. There were 9 different groups of people who were just 9. There weren't just 9, but they were 9 people, 9 groups of people that they had write a companion piece to this. And Arthel Bush Williams and I did co-write an article that talked about the boycott staged by the National Association of Colored Women in 1904 that talked about how they said we are not the kind of women that will stand for this and we're not going to participate.
Absolutely not. Yeah, you got one time to treat me bad. Like wow, like I just yeah, he my to give you some context, my mentor, he does a lot of research on like parking and like parking structures and how we as people like Americans, but also specifically Black people, pay so much to upkeep these parking garages that we don't even have access to. So think about um like sporting play, event venues and music venues, and your tax dollars went to supporting that thing to build this huge parking structure. But statistically, most people in the community are not accessing those things. And so his research is a lot about the different intricate ways that racism gets baked into policy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, we geeked out about shade for a little bit. And we gave you a writing project.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you very much for all
Yes,
the information that you all have put together and the digging you've done in all the archives about the work of these women, because they have been stellar in their efforts to provide health information and opportunity in lots of different ways.
absolutely. Well, thank you everyone so much for coming today, for sharing some time with us, for sharing this history, and we look forward to continuing to work with you, to hear from you, and to finishing this project. So thank you again, everyone. I hope you guys have a great night.
All righty. Good night for me.
Bye.